Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out a red-white flurry aggro deck featuring Sage of the Skies as voted on by my supporters on Patreon, one of the new payoffs for double spelling out of Tarkir Dragonstorm, a 3-mana 2/3 flying lifelink saying if we cast it, if we've cast another spell this turn, we get to copy it. So then we get a pair of these 2/3 flying lifelinkers, which is potentially a lot of value for just 3 mana, although we do need to jump through some hoops to enable it, especially if we want to enable it on turn 3, and the plot mechanic is a perfect way to do that. Cards like Demonic Ruckus we can plot early for just a single red, and then later cast for 0 mana, so then assuming we have another creature in play to target, we can set up our Sage to make a copy of itself. And then the Cori-Steel Cutter is another payoff for casting a second spell each turn, as we get to generate a 1/1 Monk token with Prowess, and suit it up with the equipment, giving +1/+1, Trample, and Haste on top of that, so we end up with a 2/2 Trample, Haste, and Prowess, and we can keep generating those Monk tokens turn after turn, as well as potentially being able to move the Cutter elsewhere, which can also potentially enable some of our Valiant synergies, since we are incorporating these two cards in the Mouse package, which has been working so well for red aggro decks in Standard. We've got our Heartfire Hero on 1, with Valiant picking up a +1 counter. When it dies, it deals damage on the way out. At 2 mana, a great follow-up to Heartfire Hero is a Manifold Mouse, which can give one of our Mouse creatures either Double Strike or Trample until end of turn, and we can also cast it with Offspring for 2 additional mana. And in this build, we actually end up casting Manifold with Offspring more often than you might think, mostly thanks to the Raging Battle Mouse, which is not a usual inclusion in these Mouse aggro decks, but actually has perfect synergy with not only the Mouse package, but also with the Flurry mechanic, because the Battle Mouse gives our second spell each turn a 1 mana discount, so now we can potentially cast a 1-drop followed by a 2 mana Sage of the Skies and still get to copy, so we don't even need a plotted card to enable it. And then the Celebration mechanic also synergizes very well here with the Cutter as well as the Sage of the Skies, making multiple permanents at once, so we get to give one of our creatures +1/+1 until end of turn, and that can also synergize well with the double striking Manifold Mouse. And then Emberheart Challenger, another great card here, 2/2 Haste Prowess with Valiant, exiling the top card of our library that we get to play until end of turn, so it can also provide a bit of card advantage. Sometimes if we are kind of on a stalled board, we can also move the Steel Cutter over and over, so we get to enable Valiant on cards like Challenger and Heartfire Hero, just to get those going. And then of course eventually we'll find additional spells to make more Monk tokens, and the Cutter is also very effective against controlling strategies, where the aggro decks sometimes suffer when facing a lot of spot removal and sweeper effects. Now the Cutter gives a deck a new tool to potentially outgrind those more controlling strategies. And then to round things out, of course, we're running Monstrous Rage, the card that maybe should have been banned, who knows, but for now still remains an incredibly powerful tool for aggro decks, especially ones relying on these Valiant creatures. The Monster Roll token can also help enable Celebration, so that's another neat little synergy. And then we have a bit of removal to round things out. Burst Lightning, just an effective 1-drop that we can always cast no matter the board state to deal 2 damage to any target, so that can also help enable our Battle Mouse to set up our Sage of the Skies, for instance, or get the extra Monk from the Steel Cutter, and eventually we can kick it to deal 4 damage instead. And then Sheltered by Ghosts, another incentive to splash a bit of white in this archetype as a powerful removal spell, also giving our creatures a lifelink and protection, so it can be quite valuable against other aggro decks. And then the mana base has all 12 of the red-white dual lands that enter untapped early, and then Rockface Village can also be another way of giving our Mouse creatures haste and triggering Valiant at the same time. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand seems fine. I could Ruckus on 1, and then maybe turn 3 we can run out our equipment and enable it by maybe playing the Ruckus afterwards. Yeah, that seems fine. You can always decide to play Heartfire Hero next turn, put the Ruckus on it, but I think Challenger makes sense. And then turn 3, maybe with a land we can play Heartfire Hero alongside the Cutter, and then Ruckus could also target the hero for an extra +1 counter. While triggering Prowess as well. Okay, opponent fetching for island, so it could be a domain deck. So Burst Lightning may not be at its best in this matchup. So a Teamer deck, found a Manifold Mouse. Yeah, Manifolds could be worth it now just to trigger Valiant and hopefully find a land. Alternatively, could have gone for Cutter into Ruckus, which also would have triggered Valiant. But there we go. Attack. Do I need to play around a sweeper here, like Brotherhood's End, I guess, a reason not to play a hero out? Still seems fine. It's going to be a Bloomvine Regent, helping them ramp. So there's a Teamer kind of rampy Dragons deck. Okay, so now it's time to have some fun. I can play Cutter, Ruckus. Might want to go on Heartfire Hero. Or we can go for Challenger. And then also give a double strike at this point. See what we find of Valiant. A land, so I can play that one. And then double Burst Lightning should be more than enough. Triggering Prowess a bunch. Had I saved Burst Lightning for the opponent's turn, do we also get a Monk in their turn? Yeah, we do, so that would have been a potential line as well. But yeah, this is more than enough. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have double Cutter, no other creatures, so it's a little awkward, but the Ruckus does help set it up. So I think we'll still try it. We have interaction, and Cutter plays well in kind of a grindier game, so they do complement each other pretty well. Alright, Sage is also good to have. Although missing that initial creature means we don't have an initial target for Demonic Ruckus, so things could get a little awkward as we draw another Cutter. Alright, well. Third land lets us play Cutter into Burst Lightning. As we draw another Sage. Can't really come up with a more awkward sequence of draws. Alright, I mean, I'll still run this out, I guess. And Beetles next. So this is kind of an Abzan Rhino deck, one has to guess. So I can double Burst Lightning Preacher. And then the tokens also find target for Sheltered by Ghosts, so they don't get it back. And hit you for 6. And now we've got plenty of creatures we can target with the Ruckus to set up Sage if we draw third land. A Maelstrom Pulse would be pretty unfortunate, I'll admit. And draw another Ruckus. So if they have a cut down, they can punish me for casting a Sheltered by Ghosts. Let's maybe start with Demonic Ruckus. Alright, never mind, our opponent scoops it up. But yeah, if our opponent is not holding a cut down, this is kind of a blowout. Since we get to cast Demonic Ruckus, trigger Prowess everywhere, then Sheltered by Ghost, exile the Preacher. Now they can no longer cut down since our creatures are 3/3. Move the equipment, make additional monks, and our opponent's taking a ton of damage while now having to deal with all these monk tokens. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand's keepable. missing some of the flurry payoffs, but Battle Mouse is good in multiples since we can quickly empty our hand. Plot a ruckus. And for now play Battle Mouse. So then next turn I could start with ruckus and cast a 2-drop for 1 mana potentially. Looks like they have an answer. Well, at least it didn't respond to the ruckus with removal. Enduring Innocence. Okay, so yeah, don't have an amazing turn lined up. Probably just another Battle Mouse. And pass. Is our opponent a white tokens deck? Do have to watch out for board wipes. A land is useful. So now I could play another Battle Mouse into a 2-drop. Or we could go Challenger into Manifold Mouse, for instance, and keep the other Battle Mouse in hand. Seems okay. So, Challenger could also use a map token, but we've already hit our land drop for a turn. Holding this for Offspring is also something we could do. And then we'll target the Battle Mouse itself. And give Challenger double strike, trigger Valiant. So we could see a Wrath of God, or I guess Day of Judgment is the 4-drop sweeper now. It's going to be split up, so we get to keep Manifold Mouse at least. So now we're looking at... yeah, I guess Battle Mouse doesn't really give anything a discount. Can activate Rockface Village on it. Or we can go exploring. Yeah, I guess a hasty Battle Mouse, which we can then give double strike, is reasonable. Then they'll just chump. Maybe cast another sweeper next turn. Let's maybe start here anyways. Could also just ruckus it up while the coast is clear. And this is 10 damage. Opponent still has a lot of life they can gain, so unlikely to burn them out. Especially if they have a board wipe. But the village does help. Alright, it's gonna be Beza. Just gaining 4. Could have been worse. Triple Burst Lightning, can only cast 2 of them. So I guess we'll explore with a map. Find a land. So this can go up to 4-power double strike. Let's say they double block. I guess I could just Burst Lightning the Enduring Innocence. So our opponent takes 8 and then 4 more. So that's not quite lethal. But we can keep a Kick Burst Lightning to maybe finish them off. Yeah, I guess that's fine. I'm also better off just using the Rockface Village here, since that's also 2 damage. And then I could also explore. And a shelter by ghosts I don't need. So that's 10 damage that they cannot block. And then hopefully a double burst lightning can close out the game for us. We've got the mana to kick it. Beza attacks, so Sunfall's incoming. That's fine, if they tap out for Sunfall they're dead. Possible they have a second Beza, that's also a reason to attack here. Yeah, they do. Alright, that's a lot more annoying, since now they can still sack the carrot cake back up to 10. So we've got our work cut out for us. They could also have removal for the Battle Mouse. But I guess if the double striking Battle Mouse connects, we're still fine. So do I need to activate Rockface Village is a question. Yeah, I guess that's okay. Opponent's gonna gain 3, make another blocker. So they're at 10 life. So if they block with everyone, we still trample for 2. They don't block with everyone, alright, so then we don't lose the Battle Mouse either. Pass a turn. So then if they don't gain any more life, Burst Lightning into Kick Burst Lightning would do it. Elspeth does a lot of things, but doesn't gain life.
There's a bright future ahead. Join the fight.
So yeah, for 1 mana they need some relevant interaction. May as well untap and then cast Kick Burst Lightning in my turn on the off chance that they do have some relevant interaction, then I can still play a second Kick Burst Lightning if we need the extra damage, but our opponent scoops it up onto the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Only the 1 mouse to go with the Manifold Mouse, so that's not ideal, and I guess I'll also have to take damage of Battlefield Forge to cast my red spells initially. So it's actually quite borderline. We are on the play, could go Cutter on 2, and then maybe Mouse on 3 to play around removal, but then we're not getting the benefit from Double Strike. So then it would be Mouse into Cutter plus maybe Burst Lightning, hoping there's a target. Yeah, maybe that's okay. And against other aggro decks we've got relevant interaction. Probably need to Burst Lightning now. So then we're still on the lookout for an additional 1-drop to pair with a Cutter, which we found. Okay, Mouse it is. At least against black-green mid-ranged, where they could have a lot of removal, Cutter's a bit harder for them to interact with. Okay, and then now I think Cutter into Monstrous Rage main phase is reasonable. Just so we get the Monk. If they want to trade here, that's okay. And Manifold Mouse can attack without any issues. Opponent takes it all. Falls to 10. So if they pass a turn with instant speed removal up, things might get a little awkward to set up for the Sheltered by Ghosts. Just another Dread Knight. Alright, that's fine. So now Sheltered by Ghosts on Manifold Mouse, I imagine. Exile a Dread Knight, Burst Lightning can deal with the other one, make another Monk attack while triggering Prowess, and there we have it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. Hopefully we get to keep Battle Mouse alive to help set up the Sage. So then we would still maybe need a third land as well, since we don't have a Demonic Ruckus to plot. Alright, Scavenger is always tough whether we let them play an Aura or whether we Burst Lightning now. I've often regretted not taking my opportunity to remove it because of Shard Mage's Rescue protecting it. But yeah, sometimes it can line up favorably to just wait. So at least Aura deck, besides their own Sheltered by Ghosts, is not going to have a ton of interaction. But it can also present a large threat that we're unable to remove. So for now, what makes sense? If I Battle Mouse now, unless I draw a 1-drop, I wouldn't be able to play Sage next turn. So we could start with Manifold, and then next turn, I guess if I go Battle Mouse into Cutter, we miss out on the Monk. So maybe Mouse first still makes sense. A Raging Battle Mouse, that is. And then next turn, Cutter into Manifolds also triggers Celebration. Alright, so it's the battle of the red-white mice. And hopefully we'll get to see the differences of the two decks in action. They're not running the Battle Mouse, for instance. So that's one of the differences already. So, Cutter into Manifold. And then hope to find something to cast next turn to enable the Sage, pretty much. Opponent does seem to be holding a Shard Mage's Rescue, so that can grow Manifold into a 2/3. We'll pump Raging Battle Mouse and give a double strike. And then I think I'm okay if the Monk dies to the Manifolds, if they have to waste their Shard Mage's Rescue. Because we might draw Sheltered by Ghosts at some point. Their opponent takes it. So we're keeping up in the race. But this could be a big turn for them. They do have a Sheltered by Ghosts. They probably go for Manifolds. So if I draw a 1-mana play, I can still copy the Sage. But yeah, we're not winning the race until we deal with the Challenger. Another Battle Mouse, I guess that works. So now our next spell gets a 2-mana discount. So we get to play this for just 1 mana. Can move the equipment if we'd like. Trigger Celebration a bunch. So I do have to consider playing defense now. We can start attacking with our Lifelinkers soon. So I'm probably hanging back with the tokens. And then I could pump Battle Mouse twice, attack with it. If they chump with Scamp, take out Battle Mouse, that's okay. Don't think I want to attack with a Trampler. Opponent is jumping and likely going for the Raging Battle Mouse. Yep. So we still have 4 blockers. Maybe should have played Village last turn, just wanted to represent interaction. But if we draw a Valiant card, like our own Challenger, and activate it with Village, then we might find a different land we want to play from exile. So then we would waste a line for a turn. Alright, so double striking challenger attacks. Now, the card I thought was Shard Mage's Rescue also could have been a Monstrous Rage. And if they have a Monstrous Rage, I don't think it really matters how we line up our blocks. Because this would go up to 8 power, double strike trample, that's 16 total. We wouldn't gain any life. So yeah, then we're super dead. So I don't think we can play around it, so I'm just going to jump with a 1-1. Alright, so it is still potentially just a Shard Mage's Rescue. And there's a Sheltered by Ghosts, alright, so that can turn the game around now. So cast Sheltered on something that doesn't already have lifelink, I imagine. Can make it the Battle Mouse, so we can give a double strike with the Manifold that we're getting back. So yeah, the opponent tapped out for 1 turn when they potentially had a way to protect their creature. So that's got a sting. And then Celebration, give this an extra power. And I can probably afford to attack all out, since we're gaining potentially 12 life. If they chump the Battle Mouse, then we would only gain 4, because then the extra 4 damage wouldn't apply. So they do actually deny 4 life this way. That's not a very intuitive interaction, so just wanted to point that out. But yeah, 13, they would need a pretty special hand to beat us, and since they didn't have the Monstrous Rage last turn, I can't really imagine getting up to 13. Alright, they do have their own Sheltered by Ghosts, so we're just gonna kind of trade back and forth. No, opponent does not want to get their creature back, gets rid of our Manifold. And then it could activate Village and gain 6. But this is still a race that's potentially winnable. Okay, so Hero, activate Village to give it haste. And then do we want to move the Cutter elsewhere? Probably onto a flyer. The one that's not a token in case of more Sheltered by Ghost shenanigans. And then these probably want to attack. Because yeah, next turn they can make 3 power double strike lifelink again. So trying to stay back to block is tricky. I mean, I could still try, but with the Shard Mage's Rescue, this could go up to 4 power. So then blocking with a 3-4 still doesn't work out. So I think I'm attacking like so. Possible I should even send the 1-1. So yeah, the game's pretty even. Opponent still has a bunch of cards in hand. But now if I jump with a 1-1, they also only gain 3 life if they don't pump. I guess never mind, our opponent went with Trample this time to ensure that they gain a bunch of life. So then I'll just take it back up to 12. Do they have another blocker? Yeah, this has been an interesting game. And we did get to see the new additions in action. Authority of the Consuls, alright. Not a typical inclusion in these decks. So for 1 mana, there's not a whole lot they can have, so they seem kind of dead to me. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and yeah, this is your typical mouse aggro hand. Although with the Verge we actually cannot cast Burst Lightning or Monstrous Rage, so it could be a little awkward. But I'll still try it. Pretty likely to find another red source or spells we can cast. Alright. Manifold is the preferred follow-up to Heartfire Hero. Alright, opponent's got a lightning strike, that's fine. Got more creatures in hand. And then hopefully with the Valiant we'll find a land here. We did. So that's lucky. Get in for 5 damage. And Heartfire second main, I imagine. Could also keep a Burst Lightning, which is not unreasonable, since I don't foresee myself targeting Heartfire Hero with Manifold Mouse. So then if they have their own Manifold, we can take it out. Alright, they've got another Burst Lightning. Could have tried Monstrous Rage. Kind of felt like a waste. I'll see if they want to pump the hero. They do. So now we get to punish them. And with Village, they cannot cast another pump spell in response. And Ruckus is not going to be needed apparently, as our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand's not perfect, since we don't have any kind of defensive plays that we can make. No removal, no 1 mana play we can make on turn 1. But I think it's still overall a keep. Especially if we get to be the aggressor. With double Battle Mouse we can quickly empty our hands. Challenger can trigger Valiant. And up against maybe a blue-white tokens deck. Yep. Don't know if this is the Leyline Axe variety, or if they're also playing red. Might just be blue-white. Alright, so now what makes sense? I think it's just Battle Mouse, and then next turn I could Battle Mouse into Manifold Mouse. And then we can start discounting our spells turn after turn. Could even draw our Sage and then go Raging Battle Mouse into a 1 mana Sage and make a copy, since we would get a 2 mana discount. Alright, opponent keeps up 3 mana here. Yeah, I think we stick to the plan. And this way we also enable Celebration twice. Opponent does seem to have a response. Might be removal on the first mouse, but then we would still get the discount from the second. And then this one we might actually want to cast with Offspring now. So I don't hate just casting a Heartfire or Challenger. I guess Challenger makes more sense to actually make use of the discount. And then next turn we could go Hero into Offspring, Manifold Mouse. Our opponent did have a counterspell, it turns out. So no Celebration. And a Bunnycorn. That one's pretty big. But next turn I can go Hero into Manifold with Offspring. That still only costs me 2 mana and have Monstrous Rage up. Although now Sage of the Sky is another exciting draw. So we have a ton of great options. Yeah, this might be the turn for Sage, although Hero into Offspring Manifold, attack with both double striking mice and one we can pump with Monstrous Rage kind of feels too good to pass up. So I think that's still what I'm going for. What if I go single Manifolds, then I can play this for 1 mana and I can still Monstrous Rage. That's actually reasonable too, while establishing some life-linking flyers. So maybe that's preferred. What if I go Heartfire, 1 mana Sage, and I cannot double strike? Alright. But yeah, some interesting sequencing once you get multiple battle mice on the battlefield. So now we're gonna wanna celebration on the same mouse twice. And give it double strike. And then I don't think I need to Monstrous Rage now, because if I save it for next turn, it can also enable Celebration again. And it wouldn't quite have been lethal yet. But yeah, it is possible that they would have blocked one of the double striking mice if I went for the Manifold with Offspring line. Alright, they probably should have attacked with a Vigilant Warden, so I'll virtually put myself at 10 life. They have 1 card in hand. Anchorage can also block. A Ruckus to draw. Alright, so we could start with Demonic Ruckus on one of my Sages. So those can naturally attack past the Warden. And then if they animate Anchorage as well, I guess they could still double block. So maybe I'm better off just going all in on the Battle Mouse. So hero first, so our second spell gets a discount. This way we also enable Celebration without needing to Monstrous Rage first. That resolves. Go to attackers. And then just bump itself, I think. Give that double strike. And the Sages can also attack because of Monstrous Rage. Alternatively, could have pumped each Sage once, so we have 3/4s that can survive if they block with Warden. Alright, they had an Enduring Curiosity, so that's an additional blocker, but now we don't have to worry about Anchorage animating. So with Monstrous Rage, that's more than enough. But could have also pumped a Lifelinker. Alright, so glad we got to see the Sage in action here. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. This hand's not keepable, although I will say this hand could cast Sage with only 2 lands if we plot Ruckus on 1, Battle Mouse on 2, assuming our land makes white mana, and then I can Ruckus on Battle Mouse, setting up a 2 mana Sage of the Skies, making a copy. But yeah, that's a little too risky. This I guess we'll keep. And 1 land can go. So we're plotting a Ruckus, and then going for Manifold, and then maybe turn after Cutter into a Ruckus, make a Monk. Facing blue-black. This is some sort of Pixie deck that's usually a bad matchup, although the Cutter does help, since that's harder for them to remove. Same with Sage, although enabling it can be tricky. Their opponent keeps up 2 mana. So this is the kind of spot where, if we expect a spot removal spell, we might just want to play the Cutter. And that is reasonable, even though we potentially miss out on the attack from Manifold Mouse. They could also have a counter spell, so then it's not quite as clear. I think removal's more likely, so I will play the Cutter. Although it does seem like they have something at instant speed regardless. Could just be a cantrip, but could be a counter spell. Right, that resolves. And a prologue, so poison deck, alright. Don't think the deck necessarily picked up any new tools, but it's still a very effective deck that doesn't rely on too many rares either. And it is good at dealing with creature decks, since it has access to a lot of removal that will proliferate. So sticking a creature is going to be the tricky part. So I could go with Manifolds, cast Ruckus, and then I'll still get a Monk regardless, but then they likely remove Manifold in response. So that doesn't feel great. And we are kind of stuck casting one spell per turn for the foreseeable future. But I'll wait. Hopefully next turn we'll draw lands, so I can Manifold plus Burst Lightning and get the party started. And hopefully we can at least draw a card with Ruckus. If I cast it now and they remove the Manifold in response, we wouldn't get to draw. Opponent just casting another prologue. So possible they have removal, but they're waiting for us to cast a Ruckus. Or they didn't have any instant speed removal end of turn, but now a sorcery speed drown. Still pretty good, up to 3 poison, so Corrupted has been enabled. Skull Dweller we should be able to deal with. And draw 2 with Curiosity. So now the coast is clear to potentially cast our Ruckus. Battle Mouse is a fun draw, although I don't get to make use of the discount. So I guess for now it's Manifolds into Ruckus, make a Monk. And then I'm not convinced that I should be attacking. So assuming Manifold Mouse gets removed, we get to draw a card. Then with a land I could go Battle Mouse into another Manifolds for 1 mana, while triggering the Cutter. Serum Snare bouncing the equipment itself. Possible they're gonna try and counter it on the way down, but Whisper can now cleanly take care of our 1/1. Up to 5 poison, and looks like they've got more removal. Serum Snare again. So I still get to draw for Ruckus, and we did finally find land 3. But we're up to 7 poison already, so it's not looking good. I probably just have to Burst Lightning the Skull Dweller, so then I'm not using the Battle Mouse. So then I guess Steel Cutter into Burst Lightning makes sense. And then I can afford to attack, since there's no immediate threats of creatures poisoning us. Can we deal 18 damage before our opponent deals 3 poison? I doubt it. I need them to draw more creatures that we can exile. Anoint at least doesn't apply poison. Okay, so then now it's Battle Mouse into... I guess we cannot quite Offspring the Manifolds. Could just Offspring Manifolds, period. But I think I want a double spell for Cutter. So then Battle Mouse into Manifold I think still makes sense. Because next turn I could Offspring Manifold for 3 mana. We get to enable Celebration. Hit you for 3. Alright, let's see for dead. Prologue, up to 9 poison, and I have to imagine with 3 cards in hand they've got something. Just a Skull Dweller, alright, so we still have our hopes up. They could also have the counter spell for 2 mana. Anoints, alright. And a Whisper. Alright, the slow roll. They were maybe afraid of the Shard Mage's rescue here. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. And I have to try this. Battle Mouse into Burst Lightning plus Sage is kind of what we're hoping to set up. Although, doesn't take much interaction to disrupt it. Now, Cutter is also an alternative. Opponent's gonna have a look. Yeah, I'll let them take the Burst Lightning if they want to. They should probably go for the Cutter. So then if they take Cutter, Mouse is my only play next turn. Alright, they know what we're trying to set up. So they have the means to potentially stop it. They could also remove the Mouse in response to the Burst Lightning, and then I'm unable to cast the Sage afterwards. So I'll probably start by attacking. Although I guess then we miss out on the Celebration trigger. So there's lots to consider. Opponent's gonna stock up, so Coast is clear. But this might be kind of the blue-black Demon Jace combo deck that wants to cast the Demon, reduce our library to 6 cards, and then Jace to close it out. But yeah, we get to have our wish here with Burst Lightning into Sage. And then next turn we could go Cutter into Sage, triggering Cutter and triggering Sage to make a copy, enabling Celebration again. So that's why the Battle Mouse is so critical to enable these new synergies. Definitely feels like it was specifically designed for this archetype. The discount is relevant. All these cards also enable Celebration. And we love to see cut down on our 2-3, since we've got more in store. Alright, shoot to Sheriff now. Means our turn will be a little bit less exciting, although Manifold Mouse is still fine. So Cutter into Manifolds. Could have also Offspringed Manifold, but this seems okay. And a Cutter gives us a more resilient card against removal, which can sometimes be a weakness of these aggro decks. Especially board wipes can be difficult to recover from. Possible that they have the cover-up and they can extract Sage from my hand. They have, yeah, I guess enough to collect evidence. I think it's collect evidence 6, might be 8 actually. Alright, it's gonna be the end instead. So no more Manifolds in the deck. That's okay. So I'm hoping to draw any 1-drop here, so we can enable Sage. Demonic Ruckus doesn't quite do it. Can still cast it while the coast seems clear, and then could also move the Cutter onto the Sage. Because it's possible they're sandbagging a sweeper and want me to commit the Sage first. But I could also plot Ruckus, and then next turn we'll have Sage enabled, while also enabling Cutter guaranteed. So it's kind of a close call. Yeah, maybe this turn I'll just move the equipment and smash. So then with the extra Monk and Prowess trigger, we might have enough for lethal. There's Jace, as we suspected. Do have to respect Jace if we can't win the game on the spot, because otherwise Demon into minus Jace wins them the game. So how much damage do we have? I can now go for Challenger into Ruckus, enable Prowess twice, enable Valiant, make another Monk. This, I guess, doesn't really matter anymore. So then we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage. So yeah, if they have nothing, that should be game. And since Cavern doesn't cast removal, this works for me. And there we have it. So yeah, pretty nice demonstration of all the new additions here. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand's not perfect, since we don't have any 1-mana plays we can make on turn 1. Do have a couple mice, cutter, we have Sheltered by Ghost to potentially catch back up against aggro, so definitely a keep. On the draw, could be a little slow, but we'll see what happens. Opponent's blue-white. This hand is potentially weak to Omniscience combo, since we're not blazing fast out of the gates. So, Challenger versus Manifold Mouse is maybe the choice here. Because yeah, next turn I can Cutter plus Monstrous Rage. So both mice are pretty decent with Monstrous Rage, but the Manifold maybe hits a little bit harder. That resolves. No removal end of turn. Alright. Yeah, I'm tempted to just play Cutter into Monstrous Rage right now. Now they seem to have a response, so possible they have a negate specifically. Could I guess also just Burst Lightning if we're afraid of removal on Manifold now? I guess they could have like a Ride's End if they're on blue-white control, which they weren't able to cast last turn, but they could cast on a tapped Manifold. Yeah, maybe I should play it safe. Then Challenger into Monstrous Rage is a decent follow-up to a Sweeper. It was an Elspeth Smite instead, so still would have died had we gone for Monstrous Rage, and they also had a Ride's End. So our instinct was correct. Alright, so now what? I could try Challenger into Sheltered by Ghosts just so it's harder for them to target, although Ride's End would still work. We would get to trigger Cutter that way. Or I can just go Challenger into Monstrous Rage, hope for the best. Let's start with Challenger, because if this gets countered, I don't get to enable Cutter at all. Can also equip Challenger to trigger Valiant, but we've already played land for turn. So I don't actually hate going for Sheltered, just so we don't have to use the Monstrous Rage yet. Land will go to waste. That resolves. Don't have to attack with Challenger if we want to respect another Ride's End. Is there a 4-mana card draw spell we need to worry about? I guess there is. At least one that comes to mind, the one with Bargain. Which is a reason to still kind of force them to commit some removal. I think I wait. Just hit with the Monk. Although now the concern is some sort of Sweeper. Alright, they did have a card draw spell at instant speed, the new Omen. So that makes me regret not attacking, because now we could see a Sweeper and then our hand's not looking great. It's going to be Elspeth. At least cannot destroy any of our creatures, makes a pair of soldiers. Although Monstrous Rage could be a good way to attack past it, or we can just Sheltered by Ghosts to get rid of it. But that's a little risky if they end up removing my creature later. Although with double Sheltered by Ghost they would have to pay 4 ward, but they could just have a Sweeper. So yeah, let's assume we Monstrous Rage Challenger, Burst Lightning face, Then our opponent knows that Elspeth is gone for. What if we just go face instead? I guess I should start by casting Monstrous Rage on Challenger, see what we find of Valiant, since that might affect our sequencing. Find a land. And then 10 damage. Yeah, we're getting close to lethal. Maybe I should just shelter. Yeah, do we have lethal if I just remove a token, attack all out, burst lightning another blocker, trigger prowess? Yeah, that should just be lethal here. Because all monks have prowess. Wow. Yeah, it took me a while to see lethal, but the Steel Cutter does not mess around. Sweet. So yeah, even against blue-white control, the deck can still keep up, and we get to rank up to Platinum. So yeah, this was a nice speed run through Gold. Haven't played since the rank reset, so just playing this deck so far. And yeah, of course, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We still have the solid foundation of the red-white mice, mostly the red mice, adding Shelter by Ghost, but now also the Sage of the Skies, alongside the Steel Cutter and Battle Mouse package, which all seems to synergize very nicely. So I'm quite happy with how the deck turned out. There's still potentially room to fine-tune or try other cards, but this seems like a fine starting point. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.